three. Okay, so on this Friday, we are going to be doing an art lesson, and we're going to be learning all about the abstract artist Jackson Pollock. And hopefully just from this picture here, it will begin to give you an idea of the style of artwork that he enjoyed. And then actually the background of this screen that you can see, that is a photograph of a piece of his artwork. So first thoughts, perhaps unlike any artwork that you've seen from artists before. So having a look at why he chose this particular style. Now he is an abstract artist. So perhaps what you see, it doesn't look directly like what he was intending it to, but he has used his creativity and his imagination to create this piece of abstract art. So you have to interpret it. You have to try and work out what he wants you to see in this picture. So this particular piece he named Number 1A, and this was designed in 1948. And the style of artwork that he used was called drip painting. So when it comes to painting, if I ask you to paint a picture, more than likely you would pick up your paintbrush and you would have your paint, and you would put your paintbrush to the paper and use brush strokes in order to paint. Now he very often used a paintbrush, but he didn't hold it to the paper. He held it slightly above the paper and he let the paint drip from his paintbrush. And he would use a much more runny type of paint in order to get that constant dripping motion over his pieces of paper. He would change his colours, he would change the directions that he was going. He always had an idea of what he wanted from the picture, but it would come very free-flowing from him using this drip painting technique. He was born in 1912 and he got into a lot of trouble at school. He was expelled from his school. He was asked to leave his school twice. He didn't paint on an easel like most painters. He put his canvases on the floor. So back then, painters were only really known to draw on an easel. So I have one right here. So painting on one of these. So for him to choose to do his artwork on the floor, that was really different, and I don't think people knew what to think about that. He said it made him feel closer to the painting. Now, just looking at the picture there, looking at the size of him and the size of his artwork, he worked on big scales. He was an American artist, and it was this drip painting that he has this legacy for. This is what he created. He would use different tools to drip, pour and splatter paint onto the canvas from above. These paintings became very famous. Pollock was often very unhappy, and he used his art to express his feelings. And this is why many of his paintings use dark and gloomy colours. So if I said to you, what colours do you think represent dark and gloomy feelings? What colours would you expect to see in his pictures? Perhaps greys, dark blues, dark reds, variations of colours that are a lot darker, perhaps mixed with a slight dash of black to really draw out those feelings that he had. So when you look at a piece of abstract art, the piece of art where you are having to try and work out what the artist wants you to feel or wants you to see, we need to think about these questions. So for example, looking at this piece of his work here, first of all, what do you see when you look at this painting? Because the way that every one of us interprets art can be very different. What you see in that picture might be different to what I see and to what Pollock wanted you to see. And this is why we call it abstract. How has the painting been made, do you think? What kind of colours does Pollock use? How would you describe these colours? What shapes can you see? What kind of lines can you see? How do you think Pollock was feeling when he painted this? How does the painting make you feel? And then importantly, do you like it? If you do, why do you like it? What do you like about it? And if you don't like it, then why not? What do you prefer to see in a picture? So as I show you a collection of pictures, what I would like you to be doing is thinking about the questions that we have posed here. I want you to be thinking about the styles that Pollock has used, what lines, what colours, what shapes. I want you to think about the way that Pollock might have been feeling when he was painting this particular piece of artwork. And then in the back of your mind, I want you to be thinking about what you can see. What is it that is in this picture? What do you think it could be? Think about the colours. Do they represent anything in particular? So this piece of artwork here is called Autumn Rhythm. So thinking about the title, what shows to you that this picture has something to do with autumn? Could it be the colours that he's used? The oranges, the yellows? What do the oranges and yellows represent in autumn? How do you think he was feeling when he created this picture? The rhythm part to the title, how is that shown in the picture, a rhythm? So I want you to just think about all of those questions we talked about. And then, do you like this picture? What do you like about it? Okay, I'm going to show you another one now. If you'd like to pause the video and just continue to think about those questions, try and pull out different things that you can see in the picture, then please do that now. Okay, this one is called Shimmering Substance. So really different to the one we saw before. And I want to start by asking you the question, how do you think Pollock was feeling when he created this picture? What one thing stands out to you compared to some of the others? Shimmering substance. What could the shimmering substance be? When I look at the picture, things that jump out to me are, is it trying to show a shimmering fish? I'm seeing shapes that might look like fishes jumping around, the different colours. What do you see in the picture? You might need to tilt your head slightly, have a look at it from different points of view. Do you like this one? Do you prefer this picture to the one we saw before? What colours has he chosen to use here? And the shapes? So you might like to pause this picture here and have a little bit more thought about this particular work, Shimmering Substance. And the next piece is called Number One, Lavender Mists. So I want you to have a think about those questions again. How do you think he was feeling? What does he want to show? What can you see in this picture? What can you make out from the lines and the colours? Just spend some time having a deep thought about what this picture is showing. There are more prominent lines in this picture, so I wonder what that's trying to represent. Okay, and then we have this picture here. This one is called Blue Poles. Very simple titles, very simple names for his pictures, but it gets you starting to think about why he has drawn these blue poles. What else can you see going on in between the blue poles? What are the blue poles? What colours has he used there? What is he trying to show in his picture? So just pause the video there and think really deeply about what might Pollock have been trying to show with his picture, Blue Poles. So I'm just going to share with you now a video of a man recreating some of the artwork by Jackson Pollock. He shows you the technique that was used, he used to use. He talks about some of the pieces of equipment that he would use to spread the paint. And what's really interesting is that he likens Jackson Pollock's movement to a dancer in the way that he would move around his paper and spread the paint. So just have a little look at how it was made.
Three years prior to the making of this painting, Pollock was working on a small easel painting. He'd struggled on it for a while, and he decided to take that painting off the easel, place it on the floor, and then pour some paint on the surface to finish it. From this deceptively simple decision, an entire set of creative possibilities opened up to Pollock, and he spent the next 5 years of his career exploring them. Now in the studio, let's see exactly how Pollock worked. Placing the canvas on the floor, Pollock no longer remained in physical contact with the canvas while painting. Instead of using conventional artist brushes to push or smear liquid paint across the surface of the painting, Pollock now used things like sticks, even turkey basters, or dried paintbrushes, hard as a rock, that he variously dripped, drizzled, poured, or splashed paint onto the canvas below him from. Pollock used very fluid, alkyd enamel paints, the kind of paint you could paint your car with, the kind of paint you could paint your radiator with. Because the paint was so fluid, Pollock essentially drew in space, so that drawing elements would happen quite literally in the air before falling down to the canvas below. Sometimes thick, sometimes thin, a rhythm of poured paint would develop across the surface of the painting. Now, if you know that the painting was painted on the floor, if you know that the paint has a very low viscosity, you can very easily imagine the kind of physical activities that would go into the making of this type of painting. Art historians at the time coined this kind of painting action painting, because of this very idea that you could imagine quite viscerally the actions that went into the making of the painting. Now specifically, we're talking about the actions of almost a dancer. You can imagine Pollock's feet shuffling around the painting. You can imagine rotations of the elbow and of the shoulder, variously launching or slowly drizzling paint onto the canvas below. For Pollock, the drama of making this painting on the floor meant that not only physically, but emotionally, he could be in the painting, stepping into the canvas, but also losing himself in almost this trance-like or zone-like type of painting process. Looking at the paint below you on the surface of the canvas, reacting to it, and adjusting whatever gestures you have to create this painting. Now,
okay, I'm going to stop that there, but just showing you how physically motivating this piece of work was. He likened it to a dance move with the shuffling around the paper, and just being able to look down at the piece of art and be able to immerse your emotions into what you were creating. So your task for today is going to be to create a piece of jungle art inspired by Jackson Pollock. This means we are going to look at his style, techniques and colours to inspire our own. So the theme for your piece of artwork will be jungle. So what you'll first need to think about are the colours that will inspire your jungle piece of artwork. It's going to be abstract, so what we put down on the paper doesn't need to look exactly like what we want it to. You are going to show the meaning of jungle through your colours and through the movements that you use to put this piece of art onto your paper. Think about the larger shapes that we would see within a jungle. So I'm thinking of big trees, different types of animals, large animals that you might find in the jungle, thinking about the colours that would then represent them. So perhaps thinking of browns and greens, thinking of some greys to represent some larger animals, thinking about the odd burst of colour here and there to represent some tropical animals, birds that we would find within that jungle. So I wouldn't be drawing a picture of a bird or painting a picture of a bird on my piece of paper, but I might use a splattering of colours to represent that bird, so that whoever was looking at my piece of artwork could use their imagination to try and work out what those colours might be representing. Perhaps if I wanted to represent a snake in the jungle, I would think about the movement of my paintbrush, of the paint before it landed on the paper. So you could have the paint or have whatever you are using on the end of your paintbrush, and then squiggling your wrist in order to get that snake pattern on your paper. Now, if you don't have paint available to you, that's not a problem. You could think about using your pencils or your felt tips, or perhaps even thinking about using some software on the computer that could help you try and create something similar. So I want you to still focus on it being abstract. You are not going to be drawing a picture of exactly what you would find in the jungle, but I want you to think about shapes and lines and different colours that you can use to represent the colours that are inside a jungle. So it does not have to look exactly like what it is meant to. So here are just a couple of examples. So I know that you're not all going to be in a position at home to use paints. So think about how you could then represent that with your felt tips or with your colouring pencils. So you could consider using dots, using squiggles on the page. I really like the look of this one because it's not exactly showing a picture of a jungle, but we can use our imaginations to pull out things like the water or the flowers or the trees. And that's what you are going to need to do today. I cannot wait to see your Jackson Pollock inspired artwork. And I know that Mrs. Wood is really looking forward to seeing it as well, because she absolutely loves her artwork. So let's get sending over as much of what you've created as possible, please. Right, well done, year 3.